Hello, my name is Reverend Odell Cleveland. I'm your host for this series of Safer Cities. We're excited today because we have two very special guests as we talk about the relationship between housing and crime. Today we have with us Ms. Beth Benton. She is the City Code Enforcement Manager for the City of Greensboro. And we have Ms. Misha Carrington, who's one of the leaders as it relates to the training there. Ladies, let me ask a question. When you start thinking about crime and housing, this is very passionate to me. I grew up poor. We grew up in public housing. It was time when our family was homeless. So when you start talking about crime in communities, from my perspective as a child, I remember living in public housing. In those days, we called it the projects in Charleston, South Carolina. And I remember the police running through and folks doing all kind of things. And as bad as it was, though, at least we weren't homeless anymore. So help me in your job and all the things you do to make people like me, when Odell was a child, make it safe, because it's still true. It's no place like home.
Absolutely. The job of code enforcement, we enforce the local minimum housing code as well as the nuisance code. And that's for junk, debris, overgrown lots and that sort of thing. But all of our codes are based on the state statutes, which is to preserve and protect public health and safety. And our motto is everyone deserves a healthy and safe place to live, regardless of where it is, how big, how small, it's home. So we're very passionate about enforcing our minimum housing code and making sure that landlords are held accountable, that they're providing at least that basic minimum of safety and health and sanitation quality for the tenants, and then also working with owners who just may need some education. Sometimes owners need some help.
Well, you know, I love the fact that we're not talking about slumlords. We don't have those in Greensboro. But what you're saying, sometimes they just need education. Sometimes they just need help. The majority of the owners really want their place to be safe?
Most of them do. Every now and then you'll have someone that's what we call a little bit hard-headed. Okay. But again, it's education.
Yes.
Some people aren't aware that there is a minimum housing code that they're required to meet with their properties. So, you know, we have the educational opportunity. We can also show landlords that by keeping your properties up can help you attract a tenant. If the tenant thinks you care about your property, they'll tend to care for the property as well. If they think you don't, they may not care for it. They may not call you when there's a problem until it becomes a bigger problem and a more expensive problem. So just having those conversations helps a lot. We also partner with a lot of local nonprofits to try to help people with their housing needs. For tenants, we work with the Greensboro Housing Coalition to get them moved out of unsafe housing into safer housing. And then we also have our Housing Services Division of Neighborhood Development with the city, where we have a variety of housing repair programs. A new one that we started last year was a code enforcement repair. So if you're under minimum housing code enforcement and you don't have the money to complete all of the repairs and you're an owner, occupant, we can come in and help you finish the rest of those repairs.
So you're saying there's a lot of help out there, and
Absolutely.
that's the good thing.
Absolutely.
So Michelle, let me ask you, when you look at housing and crime, a lot of times people don't really, correlate those two things. The great work that your group is doing, can you share with us some of the things that you are doing, some of the action items?
Certainly. We have, as a group, identified through the help of the Greensboro Police Department what they call hotspots in Greensboro. And those areas we're going to focus on primarily to get in touch with the community leaders there. I'm like you, Pastor Cleveland. I grew up impoverished, but I didn't grow up in the city. I grew up in the country, so I grew up on a farm. But I grew up in a neighborhood and in an era that people knew their neighbors. You loved your neighborhood, and you knew who lived beside you, and it was, in that era where you could go in your neighbor's house, knock on the door and say, hey, I'm borrowing a cup of sugar, and leave, and nothing was ever thought about it. But, not locking your doors and things like that. That's the era that I came from. But now, people don't know their neighbors. People may, because they're transient and work and that sort of thing, they move in and out of neighborhoods, so they don't necessarily know who's living beside them. So I think when we look at crime and neighborhoods and such as that, trying to help reestablish some of the community watch programs, trying to engage community leaders and families to get involved with the police department and to know, I didn't even know, and I've lived in Greensboro for almost 30 years now, and had no idea that there were community resource officers that will actually are assigned to different resource areas to come in and, you know, just look around. You can call them if there's a non-emergent situation, or you're just, you know, wanting them to patrol or something like that. And probably a lot of people don't know that.
Right.
So getting involved with your neighborhood, knowing who your neighbors are, you know, if you have a house that's boarded up, getting involved and, you know, finding out what can be done, because the thing about it is when that boarded up house is in your neighborhood, that detracts from the value of your home. And certainly you don't want the whole neighborhood to go down. Greensboro is a beautiful city and it has incredible neighborhoods in it, and if we just get back to those basics of knowing who your neighbors are, speaking to your neighbors every day. You know, a lot of times that in itself, I've been told, will deter crime. If you look that person in the eye and say, good morning, or how you doing? You know, they're like, oh, okay, she's noticed me.
So when your group started looking at the hot spots and your group started looking at the problem areas and the whole partnership between Greensboro Police Department and what you all are doing, we're just excited about that. We're just excited. And let me ask you a question. Why does it matter to you?
I've lived in Greensboro for 30 years now, and this is where I have raised my family, and this is where I work, and I also work with a lot of young women here in this community, and so this community is important to me. Everybody deserves to have a quality home. They deserve to be safe. They deserve to have a healthy and safe community. Whether they, whatever background they come from. And I think if we have enough houses, I mean, some of the most beautiful constructed houses, right on places like Martin Luther King Drive, some of the most beautiful homes that I've ever seen, architecturally and structural, but a lot of them are boarded up, but could be refurbished and utilized as homes for the homeless. So that's something that we can really, you know, look into as a city.
And Beth, we focus on housing as one of the deterrents to help reduce violent crime. Unpack that for us a little bit, please.
When you have houses that are in poor condition, they're under minimum housing code enforcement. Oftentimes you'll have a lot of heir property where people have passed on. They didn't have a will. You've got families fighting over the property. No one rightfully is the heir or the administrator of the estate. You also have foreclosures. You know, life happens. And then other various reasons, sometimes fire causes problems and people are forced out of a home and they don't have insurance to fix it. So we wind up with this group of houses that are boarded, and we have to board them for public health and safety. But they are an attractive nuisance. They're an attractive location for the homeless to seek shelter, which I don't really consider that so much of a criminal activity. That's just someone trying to seek shelter. But they could put themselves in harm's way, and I'm trying to protect them. They are residents of this city as well. I don't want anyone getting injured in a bad house, nor do I want to have to demolish all these houses. These are really fine homes, and a lot of the older neighborhoods is where you find this older architecture, which is, you can't replicate it. But that's also where the volume of our minimum housing code enforcement cases are, and the majority of our houses that are upheld for demolition. So I hold the demolition out as the last chance. And about 3 years ago, it kind of started with a conversation, and I've come to believe that everything can be corrected if people would just start talking, just start having conversations.
Well, you know the good thing about it though, Beth, it's the passion. I can feel your passion. I think the audience can feel your passion. So this is more than just a job for you. Why do you care? Why do you care so much?
That's a very good question. I just understand houses, and I understand people, and I can't really articulate it or explain it, but I know that houses are happier when they're lived in.
Yes.
A house will operate better when it's lived in. And if you've got a neighborhood full of occupied homes, then you've got a community. When you've got a block full of vacant houses, you start losing that sense of community. And I've seen communities that were really bad. My first house that I purchased was a boarded, condemned house, pending demolition, which I did not know, in downtown Durham. In fact, I moved in it with no heat, no plumbing. I bought it, it was a bank foreclosure. Got a letter from the city saying we're getting ready to knock it down, and there was 3 homeless people sleeping on my front porch. That was my first time. And I said, well, I don't care, I'm going to fix this house. And so my friends came over and we helped me, and we worked on it, and we kind of set off a chain reaction, and in a matter of a few years, a lot of these old houses in downtown Durham were starting to get fixed. So that's where it all started for me 20-something years ago.
Well, let me say this. As a child who was homeless at one time, as a child of a single mom who ended up in public housing because of her divorce, as a child who didn't know where help was coming from, but people like you back in 1960s and 70s helped people like me. And I think that help made a big difference on why I'm sitting here today versus in prison or someplace else. So I just want to say to both of you all that the work that you all are doing is so powerful and so important, and partnering with the Greensboro Police Department is just so important, and that's why I'm excited about what we're doing. Can you all share with the audience on how can they get involved? And we need the help. We need everybody to help.
Well, one of the ways you can get involved is, of course, when we start getting out into the community and into the neighborhoods. If you are a community leader, or if you know of that person, every neighborhood has that one lady or man or whoever that knows everybody in the neighborhood that's been there for 20+ years. Cooperate. Let your concerns be known. When we ask you questions, let us know what's working, what's not working, because certainly we can't come into your neighborhood and tell you what you need. You have to first know what you need and then tell us so we can help you.
If you see a house that you think needs to be inspected, if there are minimum housing code violations, an overgrown lot, dial 373-2111. That is our code compliance division. Or you can call 373-CITY, C-I-T-Y, and ask for our neighborhood development housing rehab program, and they will put you through to the right personnel to help you with your housing needs if you need assistance with repairs.
Can I say one other thing?
Yes.
Like I was saying earlier, I just recently found out who my community resource officer was, and it was really easy. I just went online and looked up community resource officers on the, I think it was the Greensboro City website. And it has the neighborhoods listed in alphabetical order. You click on your neighborhood and it brings up the officer, and it has a picture of the person. It also has the address and a phone number of where they're housed. And so, you know, when you get a relationship, create a relationship with that person. Let them know you, who you are, a face-to-face and that sort of thing. And that's a person that you can probably bring out to talk with your neighbors, or, you know, try to deter crime in your area. So if you don't know who your community resource officer is, get to know them, find out.
Okay. Ladies, just want to say that, you know, you all touched me today. I'm sure as many people just like myself who maybe grew up in public housing or grew up very poor, single mom, divorced mom. And you know, as I sat here and thought about it, just the tears started welling up, because as a child, you're not really responsible for things that go on, but it affects you. And crime in the community sometimes, it's just overwhelming. So I am just so excited about what you all are doing, and I'm so thankful that you all are doing such good work in the community, because we're saving and changing lives. The whole thing about housing and crime, that's important, and I ask everybody who's listening to us to get involved. And thank you so much. Again, I'm your host, Reverend Odell Cleveland of Safer Cities, and we thank you for tuning in, and we want you to get involved. Don't just watch us. Don't be a spectator, be a participator, because we need your help. Thank you.